Thank you, Gloria. I am so happy to be here with you. My name is Yudu. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am a WFMN innovator, a student at Hamlin, a civic engagement advocate, and the proud daughter of immigrants from Vietnam, working to do my part to realize a new day through political advocacy and increasing representation across Minnesota. Before I introduce our esteemed speaker today, I want to know what a new day means to you. Take a photo, share a piece of art, or simply a sentence on what you want in a new day using our hashtag WFMN Equity Summit 21 on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. So in my work as an innovator, I've been working towards a new day by connecting in community with elected officials, women, transgender women, gender expansive individuals, and young people interested in advocating for their rural communities. I come to the honor of introducing our keynote speaker today out of a personal passion for doing my work to increase representation in politics and organizing in my community to create meaningful change. As a young Asian woman in Minnesota, I have been active in the movement for justice. Recently, I've been speaking out even more about the harmful way we position traumatic events, from violence to acts of hate and harassment as isolated incidents of good systems gone wrong. I've been advocating that instead, we must acknowledge that systems were designed to be racist, xenophobic, misogynistic, and more. And we acknowledge that truth. We can work together to create a future that is just, equitable, and safe for ourselves, our families, and our communities. Our featured speaker today, Ms. LaTosha Brown, leads at the intersection of social justice, political empowerment, human development, and the cultural arts. Simply put, she's a visionary and a champion for justice. As co-founder of Black Voters Matter, she has been power building with Black communities for historical voter turnout in the South. LaTosha was instrumental in the recent election victories in Georgia, powered by Black women, women of color, and youth working on the ground to create a new day where voting rights are upheld and voices that have been pushed to the margins are centered, not only to benefit the communities in proximity, but the nation as a whole. LaTosha is also the leader of the Southern Black Girls and Women's Consortium and is currently fundraising $100 million to build the power of Southern Black girls and women in the U.S. Recognizing that her work is not rooted in strengthening political systems, governments, or institutions, but in the advancement of people. LaTosha Brown knows that when women organize, we win. When people organize, organized people win. And when I hear LaTosha speak, and I see the results of her leadership and the world that's being created in response to activism, hard work, door knocking, and marching, my hope for a new day of justice, equity, dignity, and prosperity is reignited. Please help me welcome LaTosha Brown.
Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. Good morning. I'm very, very excited about being here today. I'm very excited about this conversation. You know, more than anything, I'm super excited about what era that we're living in right now, the moment that we're in. And so what I want to do is, just to get us started on today, I want to ask all of you that are watching this right now, if you could just take a moment and close your eyes. I want you to get centered, get in a comfortable position, clear your mind. And I have two questions to ask you. My question to you is, what would America look like without sexism and racism? My second question to you is, what can you do about it? What is being called of you in this moment to bring that vision into being? Now, I don't know where you all are. I don't know if you were able to see anything or if you were able to imagine an America without racism and sexism. But what I will tell you is that there is nothing, and I often talk about this, there's nothing that has been brought into the physical world that was not first envisioned. You can't find, you can't find a cup, anything that you see that exists in the physical world came out of someone's vision. And so if we are to create a new world, and a new world is absolutely possible, and if we are actually going to stand on the dawn of a new day and really be able to utilize this new era that we're in right now, it is going to require us, ladies, it is going to require us being visionaries. And so what I want to do in the next couple of minutes, I just want to share what I often talk about as the V strategy. I literally believe that in this moment, what is being called of us as women of the world is that we are literally to stand in a space of our power unapologetically, and not just stand in a space that we're making things better for ourselves and our colleagues, but that fundamentally, I believe that we are the transformative leaders that the world has been waiting on. That fundamentally, as those of us, and we're in a long history of women who have always risen to the top, who've always done the work. But I also think that they have also created a space so that more of us can engage, that more of us can actually use our gifts and to really be able to bring about the vision that we see. And so with this V strategy, there are 4 pieces, which I call them kind of 4 pillars of it, that I just want to share with you briefly. The first one is, it goes back to my original question. It's around vision. What is your vision for the world? What is your vision for Minnesota? How can you create a Minnesota and where women and girls feel respected, valued, and honored? That all human beings feel respected, valued, and honored. If that is to be, then ladies, we will make it be so. We will create that, and we will create that out of our visions. And that's why it's important that we're asking ourselves that question. What will Minnesota look like without racism and sexism? And that should be our goal. We have to start with the end in mind, that fundamentally what we're looking at is not just transactions, not transactional change where, okay, there's a couple of policies and let's just open up these spaces to create more opportunity for women. No, what we want to do is radically reimagine every single system in this country, radically reimagine institutions, radically reimagine all the possibilities that exist when people are able to stand firmly in their power. Think of what the world could be when women are able to unleash and stand in the space of our power to create and utilize our gifts unencumbered of sexism, unencumbered of sexual harassment, unencumbered of all of those elements of oppression that literally seek to try to marginalize us based on gender. But if we are to actually create that world, then I am clear that women will be at the helm of that. So the first pillar that I think that we're being asked in this moment is around our vision. So ladies, it doesn't matter if you're from a child, if you're from 7 years old or less, all the way up to 130, wherever you fall on that spectrum, you had the ability and the right to create a vision of the world that you want to see, a vision for the world that you deserve and those around you. And so part of what it's going to require, though, it is going to require you spending time with that question to literally get clarity around your vision, literally be able to see through all that is happening right now so that you are connecting your vision with the visions of others, so that as we're moving forward, we are creating what is not only a new day, but a new reality, so that our new days, that each new day, right, creates a whole nother trough of possibilities and power. The second pillar that I want to just share real quickly is not only do we have to have vision, and women, we have to see, and ladies and girls, we have to see ourselves as visionaries because the world needs us, right? And there is a particular, just even as a visionary, there's a particular gift that I think women bring in terms of our insight, our perspective, our intuition, that those are not things that we should shy away from. That's what we should lean into. That is what makes us who we are, right? That is what grounds us. That's what allows us to contribute in so many ways to our families as mothers and daughters and grandmothers. That's what allows us to literally center our love in a space that is nurturing and protective and caring. The second thing is I think it's really important for us to really recognize the power of our voice, that it is important that as women, as girls, that our voices matter, that literally shaping the narrative actually helps shape and create the different kind of landscape for us to rise up. It is important that we are also using our authentic voice, and literally in part of creating that authentic voice is being able to deepen our listening to each other, being able to deepen our listening to our community, so that when we're speaking, we're not speaking from a space of an opinion because we saw it on Twitter or Facebook, but that we're speaking in a way that's been informed by those around us, that's been informed by our experience, that's been informed by our passion, our love for humanity. You know, and the third pillar that I would like to raise is really centered around victory. Well, what do I mean by victory? That fundamentally we have gotten to a place in this country that we see victory as like a football game. Like in some ways, like athletics, you either win or you either lose. You're either on the red team or the blue team. You're on this team or this team. No, there is a possibility. There's a whole nother paradigm shift that I think we have to create around victory, around what is a win-win? How can we create a victory in a way and think about victory in a way that all can actually benefit when we're moving forward, that whatever decisions we're making in policy, whatever decisions we're making in our institutions, we can create an equitable and just solution in a way that reduces or eliminates the harm that happens to communities, particularly communities that are most vulnerable. And we do that by centering those communities that are most vulnerable. If we take care of those communities that are most vulnerable, we all will benefit. All boats will be lifted. And then the fourth and the final pillar that I'll raise is really centered around, that I think carries and holds all of this. It's really around the V, which I call values. What do we believe? What do we really value? I think that when we're talking about even concepts from democracy, when we're talking about concepts around, you know, how do we actually bring equity and inclusion, what has to be centered in our values is our love for humanity. And so fundamentally, all of this work that we are doing, all of our visions have to be rooted in something that really is rooted in the values of the love for humanity. So those 4 V's that I think women that we're being called for in this moment is really to have a vision. You are visionaries, that it is your vision that will actually get us to the world that we all seek, the world that we all deserve. It is your voice that will speak truth to power. Your voice will literally be able to speak around those who have been marginalized, really be able to share perspectives that we all need to hear as we're moving forward in the future. Victory, that we will redefine what a victory looks like, that we can actually create a space. And we know, and women have done it all the time, where we actually learn, we should create a victory that is rooted in the values of sharing power, of sharing resources, of literally having nurturing environments, that in fact, that I don't have to, in order for me to win, it doesn't have to be at the expense of you losing. That in order for me to be happy, it doesn't have to be at the success, at the expense of me putting you in pain. But fundamentally, we actually can shift the paradigm of victory. And then the fourth and the final thing is, how do we root in terms of our values? That fundamentally, what is important, that what we know is that strong oak trees are not literally standing there because of their branches. It is their roots that actually ground them. Their roots are literally what gives nurturing to the rest of the tree. And that's how we have to see our values. The value that humanity matters, the value that is beyond gender, the value that supersedes this idea of race or gender or even what your geographic origin, that fundamentally as a human being, that you have value. And we women, as those visionaries and those leaders, that we can actually bring that forth and literally recreate and create a new world, because a new world is possible. A new nation is possible. That's why it's important for us to radically reimagine what are the possibilities that exist when people are able to stand in the fullness of their power. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I'm super excited about engaging in this conversation in the Fireside chat, so that we can actually go a little bit deeper and talk about what are the possibilities that exist when women use our power.
Latasha.
Greetings.
Hi, that
was so powerful. Thank you so much for being here with us.
I am so happy to be here. I really am. I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation. I love the work that you all do at the Minnesota Women's Foundation. I really think that this is a moment, a conversation that is really timely, because I do believe that we're in a special era. And I think the leadership and the voices and the vision and the work of women is going to make a difference of how we move forward in the future.
Absolutely. And you know what? I love the energy that you're bringing. Yes, bring that Southern spirit to Minnesota. We need it. I've always believed in the possibilities of a new day. And you alluded to it, but when we say a new day, it's about our ability to imagine, to vision, as you've stated, to act, to keep moving forward. And we do that by changing systems. We do that by changing narratives and laws. And in following your work in the hardest times, Latasha, I noticed this concept of keep on moving, keep creating a new day as a theme in your work. You've referenced often one of my favorite verses, weeping may last for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Or the songs that you sing, amen, about waking up in the morning with freedom on your mind. And as we're thinking about our community right here in Minnesota, I want to know, what does the struggle of realizing a new day mean to you?
I think I want to start with the framework of oftentimes what we think is we think that the big change is going to happen when we change the systems outside of ourselves. I actually think that the core change actually starts with us. Yes. I think that fundamentally what sexism has done, as oppression has done, all those different forms of oppression is literally has been designed in a way to help to break the human spirit, to actually make women and girls and people who are in communities that have been marginalized, that are dealing with poverty, that are dealing with issues from police brutality, that are dealing with issues related to racism, that fundamentally the biggest offense has been in breaking of the human spirit, or even tying the human spirit or marginalizing the power of the human spirit. I think the greatest sin is really creating the circumstances, and when people don't feel a sense of powerlessness, creating the circumstances where people don't really have what they need to take care of their basic needs, so that fundamentally that they feel like they don't have a voice, that they don't have power. So I think that the key thing when we're talking about starting a new day, that the change starts with us. And what do I mean by that? I want women, if there's nothing else that anybody remembers, anything else I say today, I want women and girls that are looking at this to know that you are your circumstances. You are above your circumstances. It does not matter where you are, what community you're in, that you matter. You don't just matter because you did this degree, or you did this work, or you did this piece, that your very life has value. And because your life has value, you are literally owed a space around dignity and respect. And so there's oftentimes what we have to really recognize and get centered in is that our very presence warrants, like literally it warrants that there is of my humanity. And so what I want the young women that are watching this to really understand is that your value is not just based on your accomplishments. Your value is rooted in your humanity. And so if nothing else, if we're actually tapping into the power of our humanity, when we tap into the power of our humanity, we are unstoppable. When we literally understand how much power we have, then when we fully understand that women are actually the majority of people in this country, and that we have power and that we have value, guess what? Every single system is going to have to change, right? Because we will be changing. That our perception of who we are, our perception of our contribution, our perception of literally how systems should be designed to honor and respect us, they will change. And so I think there's a number of things. If I were to think like 3 buckets of what I think in terms of creating a new day, the first thing in terms of creating a new day is really recognize that we're co-creating what that day looks like. Yes. That every day we should get up and think about what needs to be done and what's our vision of what it is we want to see. The second thing I think when we're talking about creating a new day is understanding that we're not alone. We're not by ourselves. And that is really important, why I think that everybody should have some kind of community, some organizational home, that to start, if you're young women that are watching this right now, get involved with some organization, whether it's at your church, whether it's your local community, where it's a group of your friends that want to start something. That part of our power, and women have always recognized that, which is, I think, has been the power of the sisterhood, is that when we work collectively, we're able to leverage our personal power as well with the personal power of others. And so I think it's really important that we literally find what our sense of community that we're plugging in with, that we can actually build institution, we can build our thoughts, our visions together, collectively together. And I think the third thing is, I think we have to revisit, this whole notion around our love for humanity, that nothing can trump this notion of the love of humanity. What does that mean? If we didn't see anything else with COVID-19 taught us and showed us how selfish we are as a culture in the country. Part of people were actually livid that they would actually have to wear masks. Well, who wants to wear masks? I don't want to wear masks wearing masks, they're not comfortable, they're not cute, and then I can't wear my cute lipstick, right? But the bottom line is, as much as I want to wear my cute lipstick, as much as I don't like masks, what has more value to me is a human life. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm wearing a mask actually helps protect not only my life, but the lives of others, what's so hard or so bad about that? And so I think the third piece is we actually have to engage in a conversation of a humanity around how are we going to reclaim our humanity, that there is nothing that we are literally creating in this culture that should not center the value of human life and human beings.
Yes, you make me want to get up, clap, give you all of the praises, because this especially resonates being here, right here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, in Minnesota. We have been at the center of social justice and social change, especially over the last year. And while Minnesota has been visible because of the murder of George Floyd, may he rest in peace, we've also been seeing you all and how you organize in the South, right? So I want to talk about the case of the South. And particularly in conversation of realizing a democracy that represents the interests and dignity of all people, as you just said. This work has been called the Rise of the New South, but we know this work is not new. So while you, Latasha, and folks like Stacey Abrams and others are seen and visible now, we know that Black women and women of color have been organizing, and this work that you're leading is off of a legacy. So as Minnesota continues our work of creating a new day in Minnesota, share with me, after we have a vision, right? After we realize our voice, after we're organized, and after we identify our values, what does it take to sustain a movement?
I think part of it is twofold. I think you have to do the work, the short-term work in terms of building the movement, but you also actually have to do the transformative work while you're doing that. And I'm raising this because I don't want to, as I'm talking about vision, I'm not just saying vision around, okay, we have an idea. We have to literally be bold and courageous enough to know that there are things that we have to do in this moment, yes, but that if we want a new outcome, we're going to have to create change, that we're going to not have to be afraid to do new things, to ask for new institutions, new ways of being. And so that's going to require us not just fighting for what we see now, right? But we're also going to have to be organizing around what are those things that we want to see different. And so I think there's a number of things that we've done at Black Voters Matter. I think one, even just shifting the paradigm around who is in the center when we're talking about voting. There are a lot of people that care about Black votes, but didn't care about Black voters. And so as an organization, what we decided is that what we wanted to do is to shift the entire narrative around, one, who Southern Black voters were, that what our power, oftentimes we would hear on TV, it was like, oh, they're in the South, they're in these red states, it's voter suppression, they don't have any power. And so that was a particular kind of narrative. That narrative actually can make people feel more depressed. That narrative actually make people feel less powerful, right? Or more powerless, right? And so for us, we needed to shift that narrative and say, listen, in spite of the voter suppression, and spite of the structural racism, we have power. We have power that actually was bred in us, in our humanity, in our very being, in our presence, in our spirit. And we're going to lean into that. We're not going to shy away from that. And so what we do is the work that we're doing is literally going to transform, not only transform externally, but transform how we see ourselves, how we think about our work, how we think about ourselves. I think part of being able to do that is to recognize that we're actually doing two things at the same time. We're actually flying the plane or flying an old plane and building a new one. And so part of what we do as an organization is do the work that we're actually being able to engage people in the political process now. But we changed a couple of things. Instead of the focus being around political candidates or political parties, we actually center the people. We say this isn't about their power. This isn't about what they want. This is really about what you want. And literally voting in the process actually gives you an opportunity and a voice to do that. But we're also, the second thing that we do, I think, is as a particular kind of approach, is that we're honest with folks. That literally we really tell them that voting is not the panacea. It's not going to solve all of the issues, right? That literally voting is a tool and a very powerful tool, but it also has limitations. And so while we are voting, we also have to do the work that we're envisioning and that we're building new institutions and we're expanding our capacity. And so while we're having that conversation with them around the things that we have to do now, we're always in a dual conversation that we're talking about. This is what we have to do now, but we're starting with the end in mind. The end in mind is how do we create systems, institutions, a nation in which we are honored and respected and lifted. There is nothing that can actually stop us from doing that if we're really centered in our vision, if we're centered in our work. And so that's part of what we do. The other thing that I think is really important about what we have done, and I think this is really important around for the foundation, is that we also realize that this work takes resources. And so as an organization, we decided we are Black Voters Matter Fund, that what we knew that if we were actually going to build a movement, you have to support the grassroots organizations, that you have to strengthen the capacity of what happens on the ground. And so the focus of our work has always been centered in, like, literally, how do we strengthen the capacity of grassroots folks, those folks who are sitting on the front lines, who are doing this work day in and day out, those folks that regardless of what circumstances or what resources they have, those are the people that constantly show up. And so that's what we believe, that part of where the transformational change is going to happen is strengthening those groups that are on the ground that are doing grassroots work. Now, the young people that are listening to this conversation, I mean, wondering, it was like, well, I don't have an organization, or, what is it that I can do to help? You are the futurists. You have to think of yourself as futurists, ladies. You have to think of yourselves as the founders of a new America. What would, as in that vision that I raised, what would America look like without racism and sexism? What would Minnesota look like? What are the possibilities that exist? And we have to see that with that end goal in mind and literally start collectively working on creating that vision so that people can actually see what is possible and start moving towards that. So I think it's really important that we're resourcing the work, that we're connecting and building power by really collectively being engaged in conversation together. But I think the third and the really important piece really is centered around how are we actually pushing ourselves to envision something different so that our work is not constantly just responding to what is.
So I hear you talking about vision, check. Okay, I'm all with you. I hear you talking about power. Absolutely. Power is and will always be in the organized masses. But now I also want to bring in courage. I don't want to over glamorize what it means to be in the movement. It takes real courage. And when I think about our community here in Minnesota, I think about the courage that was demonstrated by girls like Darnella Frazier, stepping into a very scary moment and utilizing the tools in front of her for Minnesota to reach a historical verdict. I think about the courage of systems and institutions changing or abolishing systems we thought to be indefinite, or the courage of individuals and institutions and organizations implementing new policies or having conversations on courageous topics that aren't always as comfortable. And finally, I think about the courage that it takes to keep going. And so, LaTosha, my question to you is, what comes to your mind as you think about the place that courage has in this conversation and in our ability to realize a new day?
You know, there's a couple of things. The first thing, and you're absolutely right, you know, there's so many women, and just as the young women that you mentioned have been so courageous on leading this fight. But what's so interesting is, let me tell you what is interesting that is required in courage. Courage is not, doesn't mean that you don't have any fear. Courage is actually the opposite. You know, courage is not required when you don't have any fear. Right? Like when you're not fearful of anything, you don't need courage to do it. You can just do it. Like, you know, and so I say that because part of the element of courage is those women or those girls who are literally, in spite of the circumstances, in spite of the barriers, that they actually, that barrier, it is that thing, courage is that thing that allows them to move and operate in their power in spite of the thing. Oftentimes because of the thing, that is that very thing that is a catalyzing element around that creates the courage. And so I say that to the young women that are out there, that your barriers actually can feed into and catalyze your courageousness. You know, the things that actually are fearful, those things that literally people are saying that you can't do, that is when you pull and you utilize, and it actually shapes literally the foundation of the development of your courage. That part of what I think we have to really think about is that communities of color, we've seen so many stories of girls and communities of color and those who have been marginalized, to actually these stories of courage, because their circumstances, they have used those barriers that were used to actually suppress them or to oppress them. They've used those barriers to catalyze the formation and development of their courage. And so I think it's a couple of things that we're in this moment right now. You know, one of the part of cultivating courage is getting in a space that we have clarity, that you have clarity what it is that your values are. As I talked about that V strategy around the vision and using your voice and the victory, but the most important things around what's your values, what is it that you really believe? What is it that you really know in your heart is just the right thing to do? What is it that you know that should be happening in the world? That is where your values are rooted. And oftentimes when you're in a space or being called for a moment that you have to utilize your courage, you may not have anything else but just your values to lean into, that I believe that people should not be hurt. And even though I am fearful in this moment, even in this moment, I may not know what to do. Even in this moment, I don't have the resources I think that I need to fight it. I am going to speak out. I am going to say something because my value is that this human life matters. And so that's what we see. Those that use courage, they actually tap into whatever that value that centers them around, whether it's humanity, whether it's love, whether it's family, whether it's whatever those things are. And so I think it's important that the young women that are watching this, that actually recognize that you have courage. As a human being, we're all born with a speck of courage. How it is developed is the circumstances that literally you allow yourself. I think there's a couple of things. One, having clarity around what it is that you believe, though a clarity around your values. I think the second thing is literally being able to build up that muscle of really being able to recognize your fears, but knowing that you have power to really overcome your fears. Does not mean the fear is gone. Doesn't mean that the fear is going to leave. Right. But what it does mean, what courage does, courage allows you to get that extra pep in your step so that you can jump over the hurdle. You still see the hurdle, but you can jump over the hurdle. Right. And sometimes you recognize that the hurdle that you thought wasn't quite as big as you thought it was. Right. But it may take that extra measure of courage to really be able to do that.
Okay. So your courage is connected to your vision, is connected to your power and your values. That's the word. So Latasha, we have to wrap up. I want to talk to you all day, but we have to wrap up. What's the last word you want to leave us with? What a last word that you want to leave Minnesota with? And I also want to say, while the summit is 1/3 youth, and we're absolutely talking to them, it's also women, men, and gender expansive people of all ages watching. So what is a word you want to leave us with today?
The word that I want to leave us with is we are on the edge of a new day. We're in that new day. And so we've been given a gift. We literally have a choice. We have a choice to go down the road of peril, right, and ignore the opportunities that exist right now, or we have the choice of going down the road that is full of possibilities and promise. Imagine that when every human being is able to actually utilize a respected and valued, you don't have to like them, but they're respected and valued and able to utilize their gifts. What would the world look like? What would the world look like if all women and girls in the state of Minnesota were able to operate in their gifts and their talents unencumbered by sexism or racism or any of those forms of homophobia, those forms of oppression that seek to actually make us feel that we're powerless? That fundamentally, we, in this moment, you are being called. In this moment, you have the opportunity to shape how we go forward. In this moment, you have the opportunity to co-create not only a new day, but a new nation, a new world, a new universe. And yes, I said universe. I believe that the real transformation will start with us. And I think it's all centered in this notion that's very simple. It's in the notion of love, that we start, if our beginning and our endpoint all starts with for the love of humanity, if we just use that as a frame, everything decision that we make will actually have a different kind of character. It will have a different kind of shaping. So I just want to say thank you to all of those that show up day in and day out courageously. Like you show up in your life courageously. You show up in your families, in your jobs, in your spaces, in the boardrooms. We thank you. And yes, you are making a difference because mighty rivers are filled drop by drop. But really recognize that this is a moment, that we are in an era that I do believe that in a moment of what we see great uncertainty and pain, there's often the greatest opportunity to recreate and reimagine. So let's reimagine what is possible by using our radical reimagination to really create the world that we all deserve and that we'll create together, that is centered in the issue of love and on the foundation of humanity.
Latasha, did you wake up this morning with your mind on freedom?
Woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. Whoa, I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. Whoa, I woke up this morning with my mind set on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Many of us have awakened this morning with our mind on freedom. Yes. Let's stay there and let's create the new day we deserve, ladies.
Oh, thank you so much, Latasha. Sending you all of our love, and we hope to have you in person back in Minnesota again. Thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll just have to say hi to my Purple family because I love Minnesota.
Yes.
For my Prince folks.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. So I'm talking to you all who've tuned in to the words, the wisdom that Latasha just dropped for all of us. She kept saying young women. It is absolutely about young women and young people, but it's also about all of us right here in this community tuning in today. So if you're moved, take a moment, utilize the chat or social media. You know our hashtag. We're really trying to engage you. Tell us what resonated with you. She gave us a framework: vision, voice, values, victory. She gave us a 3-step on how we could go from vision to action. I want to hear what's resonating with you as you think about your role to realize a new day.